Chapter 1471. Lizzie wakes up shortly after I do and I offer her breakfast, but she is still full from all the beasts. Anne invites me to join him and his daughter for breakfast once it is ready. It probably won't be as much food as I need, but I will go ahead and accept to be polite. After breakfast, we get back on the road, but I end up eating more while riding Lizzie. I chat with Lizzie as we ride alongside the carriage and tell her everything I have learned. I don't expect her to be all that interested in essence, but it helps me to organize my thoughts. She listens intently and even asks a few questions here and there as we continue along the road. If nothing else, it helps to pass the time, and just as it is getting to be lunchtime, we arrive in a decent-sized town. We stop and have lunch at an inn where we try all of the local specialties, some of which are quite good. As usual, for the best of them, I order a second serving and add it to my food pouch. I should be able to add quite a few new dishes to the pouch on this trip, if I am lucky. Everyone would be quite disappointed if I didn't bring back new foods for them to try. After lunch, we continue on and stop to set up camp once it starts to get dark. Lizzie and I spend a few hours searching the surroundings, but we don't find any strong beasts. I am guessing that we are too deep into the kingdom, and the area has been cleared of them. The essence of the few beasts we do come across gets fed to the spider essence, but it isn't enough to make a difference. At least, not a visible difference, which is all I am worried about right now. Now that I know more, I really want some essences from stronger beasts so that I can study them. We should reach the capital tomorrow to pick up our first king, and then we will be heading north. That will bring us closer to the center of the continent where the stronger beasts are. Hopefully, I will be able to get the essence I need on that part of the trip. I will just have to wait and see how things go. But for now, I open up a soulscape. The only difference this time is that I have Mulan act as basically a teacher's assistant instead of a student. It turns out that she is much more knowledgeable than me when it comes to attacks and defenses. However, that isn't really surprising since she has lived a lot longer than I have. In fact, I have no idea how long she has lived between all of her lives, or how many lives for that matter. It is quickly apparent that she has done a lot more soul combat than I have, and I even learn a few things from her. Before long, it is Mulan doing the teaching while I assist her, but I have fun doing it. The only advantage I have over Mulan's knowledge is the ideas from my old world. Mulan has watched a lot of anime, but I still know a lot more about the technology of my world than she does. Although, when I use that knowledge in attacks or defenses, she picks it up really quickly. If my wives and the other kids can get to her level of knowledge, then I would be fine with them entering the hallway. That isn't going to happen quickly, but it is nice to have a goal to give the kids. After training and playing with the kids, I spend some time with my wives and then end the soulscape. I sleep for a few hours, have breakfast with AMN, and then we get back on the road. We reach the capital a little before lunch, but since we are ahead of schedule, the king isn't ready. The plan is to have lunch here with the king and then to head out afterwards. Luckily, that gives me enough time to head into the city and look for the glass that I need. While I am at it, I take out a gate platform and sink it under the road, deep enough that it shouldn't be found. A single question to a street vendor quickly leads me to the only glassmaker in the city. Since I don't need finished products, I end up buying an entire barrel of broken and failed projects. It is stuff they would have melted down and attempted to reuse, but they happily sell it to me for a single gold. It is enough glass for me to make at least a dozen jars, probably more. It should be more than enough for what I need, so I put it away and head back to the castle. There is still a bit of time before the meeting, so I head to the stables to fix the king's carriage. The king will be bringing just the one carriage and 10 guards to join our group. I am not sure if he is just confident in his men, his kingdom is that weak, or he trusts Sam to keep him safe. Whatever the case, at least it means we shouldn't be slowed down much. I do have some trouble getting the servants to let me touch the king's carriage, but Am takes care of it. He seems to be quite well known here, and the servants stop arguing as soon as he speaks up. I managed to get the carriage enchanted just in time for us to be called in to meet the king. As we head into the castle, I walk beside Am, which gets me odd looks from everyone we pass. Once we are inside the castle, we are guided off to a side hallway instead of the main one. I am guessing that leads to the throne room, but since we are having lunch, we won't be going there. The side hallway leads to a smaller dining room, one that is overly opulent. There are guards all along the walls inside the room with servants standing between them. What draws my eyes the most is the table, which is covered in gold. At least, I hope it is just covered. Whether it is solid gold or just coated in it, either way, it is a massive waste of money. The rest of the room isn't as bad, but it is still overly decorated and designed to show off the king's wealth. As I am looking around, the king enters. He looks to be in his 40s and is rather heavyset. Emperor Am says, "There he is. Ash, this is King Grimshaw. Grimshaw, this is Emperor Ash." King Grimshaw says, "Nice to meet you, but what are you the emperor of?" "The Britannian Empire." King Grimshaw says, "Forgive me, but I have only ever heard of the two empires." Emperor Am says, "His empire is to the west of mine, and he is my ally." King Grimshaw says, "The west. Is he a demon?" Emperor Am says, "Number his empire is farther west than the demon lands." King Grimshaw says, "Farther west? I had no idea there was anything beyond the demon lands." Chapter 1472. Emperor Am says, "Neither did I. At least, not until I met Ash anyway. He will be traveling with us to the conference. You should treat him as my equal. I do." King Grimshaw gulps and says, "Understood." Then he gives me a slight bow. It is rather awkward, but the moment is broken by more servants entering with trays of food. As the host, Grimshaw takes the seat at the head of the table, and Am and I sit on either side. The servants lay the trays on the table and fill plates for each of us, but they are normal-sized portions. As the servants move away, I ignore manners and load my plate with several more portions. Grimshaw raises an eyebrow at that, but he doesn't say anything and just focuses on his food. As I start eating, I notice scuffs and scratches on the table, so out of curiosity I scan it. The table is made from wood and just gilded with gold, but it is still a waste as far as I am concerned. In fact, the gilding is hiding the fact that the table itself is masterfully crafted. I would find the table far more impressive without the layer of gold, which is just gaudy. Out of habit, I run a scan through the table and find that it has a decent mana capacity, but it is degrading. The wood the table is carved from is starting to break down, so it must be really old. The gold has been in place for a while as well, so at least it seems Grimshaw didn't do it. As I am scanning it, I realize that the table has detailed carvings that have been covered up by the gold. It is almost like adding the gold was to hide the carvings, which makes me curious. However, I hold back my curiosity for the moment and continue eating. King Grimshaw says, "Emperor Ash, forgive me, but I can't help but feel that I have heard your name somewhere before." Emperor Am says, "You probably heard it from my people. Ash is the one who figured out how to push the living desert back." King Grimshaw says, "Really? That was you. In that case, thank you. Thank you so much." "No problem. It was really just me wanting to satisfy my curiosity. Speaking of, now that we are done eating, would you mind if I fix this table?" King Grimshaw says, "Fix it? I know it is gaudy, but I don't think it is broken." The gold was added later, and it seems it was done to hide the original carvings. I am curious about those carvings. King Grimshaw says, "Well, if I am being honest, I hate this table, so go ahead." I wait a minute for the servants to finish clearing the table, and then I push my mana into the gold. The gold was molten when it was applied to the table, so it is quite difficult to remove. It would probably be impossible using normal methods, but magic is a great cheat. Under the influence of my mana, the gold is extracted from the table and forms into two small bars. Putting them aside, I put a repair and a cleaning enchantment into the table. Under the influence of the enchantments, the table is soon returned to its former glory. Emperor Am says, "Wow! This table is a masterpiece." King Grimshaw says, "Yes, it is. I had no idea, but I can see why this was done." "What do you mean?" King Grimshaw says, "These carvings depict the former royal family, the ones that my great-grandfather deposed. He tried to destroy all record of them once he took the throne." "Why not destroy the table instead of covering it up?" King Grimshaw says, "Honestly, I have no idea. There must have been a reason considering how much of a waste of money it was. Unfortunately, we will probably never know what the reason was." Emperor M says, "Well, At least it is a much more attractive table now, unless you plan to also suppress the past. King Grimshaw says, "No, I don't see a point to doing so. I have even allowed the old records that were kept hidden to be added to the library. That is a good thing. Those who don't study the past are doomed to repeat the mistakes that were made." King Grimshaw says, "What do you mean by that?" For example, if you study what led up to the fall of the previous royal family, then you can avoid making the same mistakes that they did. King Grimshaw says, "That makes sense. I had never thought of it that way. I always thought that those scholars who studied history were just incapable of doing anything else. Maybe I should pay more attention to those historians." Emperor Am says, "One of my advisors is my chief historian. He can almost always find some relevant information to any problems that come up." King Grimshaw says, "I will consider doing something similar once I return. For now, we should get going." "Unless you want to stay the night and leave in the morning," Emperor Am says. "Number, we can make quite a bit of distance before dark. Let's get moving." King Grimshaw says, "Are you sure? You know that the old bat will be grouchy if we show up early." Emperor Am says, "She is not that bad, and she is also not that old." King Grimshaw says, "You can only say that because her kingdom doesn't border your empire directly. You don't have to deal with her and her daughters anywhere near as much as I do." Emperor Am says, "Oh, right, her daughters. That could be a problem. Something that I need to know," Emperor Am says. "The kingdom we are headed to next is ruled by Queen Mabel. She survived the passing of her husband and retained control of the kingdom. She has quite a strong personality and tends to be very blunt." King Grimshaw says, "Actually, she has outlived 2 husbands." Emperor Am says, "Anyway, she has a number of daughters and is likely to try and get you to marry one of them." "No thanks. I already have 4 wives. I don't need any more." King Grimshaw says, "4. You are so lucky." "My wife is a harridan. She won't even let me look at other women. She even replaced all of the attractive maids." Emperor Am laughs and says, "You probably did something to make her suspicious." Grimshaw grumbles, but he doesn't try to refute Am's statement, which probably means it is true. They continue talking about women as we leave the castle, and the caravan gets ready to go. Even though he has his own carriage, Grimshaw joins Am in his carriage. I have no idea what they are talking about, but we haven't even left the city when Shiro leaves the carriage. She mounts one of the extra beasts and then rides up alongside me to chat with Lizzie. We soon leave the capital behind and follow the road heading north. Chapter 1473. The caravan manages to reach a town just as it is getting dark, and we stop for the night. Am and Grimshaw rent out 2 entire inns for the night, one for us and one for the troops. The food at the inn is surprisingly good, but definitely not healthy, and I add several more dishes to my pouch. Since we are staying in a town, I don't bother to go out looking for beasts and just open a soulscape. I do the usual with my wives and kids, but after they are gone, I invite the goddesses for some fun. I am spending quite a bit of time with their avatars and don't want them to feel ignored. Besides, if I have the chance to have 2 goddesses, why would I not take advantage of it? Considering how excited they were, I should probably try to remember to do it more often. By the time I am done playing with them, I am actually tired enough to sleep until morning. Breakfast brings with it several more dishes of fried goodness to add to the pouch. Again, they are unhealthy, but everything that tastes good tends to be bad for you in some way. Besides, I am pretty sure that with healing spells available, we shouldn't have to worry about things like that. We leave after breakfast, and we cross the kingdom's border shortly before lunchtime. We stop for a quick lunch in another town, but we don't make the next town before it gets dark. Grimshaw starts complaining about having to camp, but Am ends it by assigning an attractive maid to serve him. It is definitely not a move that I would make. But I am also not going to interfere. I am sure that Am knows what he is doing, and I trust him not to force someone against their will. He especially wouldn't do something like that with his daughter around and watching. Besides, I doubt that he had any problems finding a woman who wanted to get close to a king. She probably jumped at the chance, a chance to change her entire life. Even if Grimshaw can't take her home, I am sure that he will be generous with her. As a king, he shouldn't lack money, and unless he is a complete fool, he will know why she is there. Shiro also sees what's going on and she doesn't say anything about it either. Although, when she notices I see a look of disgust on her face for a second before she hides it, she is being restrained about it. But I am fairly sure that Am will hear about it later in private. That is none of my business, but it is a rather entertaining situation to think about. Just imagining Shiro ranting at her father about the poor, helpless maid has me almost laughing. When I reach Lizzie and she sees my smile, she demands that I explain why I am smiling. I know better than to try and argue with her, so I tell her the situation and what I was imagining. Lizzie's laughter sets the beasts off in their pen, but a quick hiss silences them. The beasts really are terrified of her. Not that I blame them, but it makes it easier on the guards. I have heard a few of them commenting on how docile the beasts have been so far. Then, again, being worried that something is going to eat you if you act up is understandable. Once the beasts have calmed down, I place wards around the camp and then mount Lizzie. She heads out into the surroundings, looking for beasts, and I work on making some more jars. I doubt we will find any strong beasts in the area. It is a little too civilized for that. Still, I would rather have the jars made and enchanted before I actually need them. Besides, it is not like I need to worry about guiding Lizzie. All I need to do is stay in the saddle. Lizzie covers a lot of ground in a couple of hours, but she doesn't find anything more than a few small beasts. To be honest, it isn't really worth collecting their essence, but I do it anyway for the practice. I still haven't been able to gather essence without cracking the core first, but I am working on it. I can drill into the core with mana and get the essence, but that is basically the same as cracking it. The core is basically designed to protect the essence, and so far I haven't found a way around that. Although, that does explain why my drain touch can't drain the essence from beasts. If I can just figure out a way to get the essence without breaking the core, I can fix the spell. However, so far it doesn't look like that is going to be possible unless I learn something new. Somehow, I don't think that is likely to happen before I find some stronger beasts to study. That is definitely not going to happen in this area. The hunting is too poor for that. It is so poor that when we get back to camp, Lizzie complains of still being hungry. As I am feeding her from my pouch, I remember that I need to create a stronger version. One that can feed the dragon, or at least give him a decent meal the next time I visit. Once Lizzie has eaten, she settles down to sleep, and I spend some time designing a better pouch. Unfortunately, the hide of the spider, the best I have right now, isn't going to hold enough enchantments. I will need some better hide, and even then, I will be adding some other materials. In order to create a great amount of food, the pouch is going to need to be able to gather a lot of mana. The more mana it has to store, the more detailed the enchantments need to be to contain it. Not to mention that it will need more safety enchantments to make sure it doesn't overload. I could probably throw one together right now, but it would be better to take my time and plan it out. I work on the design for a bit, and then put it aside as I open up a soulscape. I spend time with my kids and my wives, and then afterwards I get some sleep. In the morning, Grimshaw is in a much better mood, but Shiro is avoiding him. After breakfast, as the servants are packing up, I notice one of Am's soldiers mount up and ride off. When I ask him about it, Am tells me that he is sending word to Queen Mabel that we will be arriving early. It seems that we should reach the capital by dark, almost a full day ahead of schedule. While Am doesn't think Queen Mabel is as bad as Grimshaw says, he doesn't want to test it. Besides, since we are staying the night, it just makes sense to give Mabel's servants time to prepare. Chapter 1474. We are soon on the road, and it is a fairly boring trip with just a short stop for lunch. It is late evening when we reach the capital, and I am surprised by how different it looks. Grimshaw's capital was what I would call a typical medieval city with basic architecture. This city, despite only being 2 days away, is completely different, both in style and color. It is made from mostly white stone, and there are a lot of domes throughout the city. It reminds me of how Arabian cities tend to be depicted in movies, not that I ever saw one myself. However, the clothing doesn't match. I don't see any flowing robes or anything like that. The people are the same as those I saw in Grimshaw's city, both in looks and clothing. It strikes me as odd that the people don't match the city. It makes me think that they didn't build it. The area around the city is green fields for the most part, which makes the city seem even more out of place. If you took the city and dropped it into a desert, it would fit in perfectly. Another odd thing is that while the buildings are made of white stone, the city's walls are gray. Shiro says, "Is the city confusing you?" "Yes, several things don't match." Shiro says, "True. The original city wasn't built by these people. They found it. The walls and the newer buildings were built by them. That's why everything looks so mismatched. Did this area used to be a desert?" Shiro says, "Not that I know of." "Why?" "In my old world, we had cities similar to this, but they were in desert regions," Emperor Am says. "I seem to recall one of my teachers when I was a kid saying that this area changed a lot when the living desert appeared. I can't remember how it changed, but it could have been a desert before that." Shiro says, "There is the desert to the east of here. It could have been larger in the past. I never paid much attention to the topography of the area. Are we going to be crossing this desert? Is there a civilization there that makes similar buildings?" Shiro says, "We will have to cross the desert, but there is no civilization there. Only monsters and bandits." Emperor Am says, "That's not entirely true. There are small tribes of nomads that roam the desert, but they are a dying breed. Sounds like they could be the last remnants of the civilization that built this place." Shiro says, "It's possible, I suppose. But why does it matter? Because every building we have passed that is made from the white stone is enchanted. What's more, the enchantments are complex. They are more advanced than what was on your carriage." Emperor Am says, "That carriage was purchased from the Magic Kingdom. It was not cheap, but it wasn't the best available. Still, it means that whatever civilization built this place was really advanced." "Exactly. I am wondering what might have been left behind. But if there was anything I would think it had been found by now, then again, I would expect more advanced magic if they had found anything." Emperor Am says, "I have never heard of them having found anything like that. This kingdom's magic isn't even as advanced as my empire's. We can always ask Queen Mabel. We will be meeting her in a few minutes. Maybe. We will see how things go." Chances are that either nothing was left behind, or it was hidden so well that no one ever found it. Shiro says, "If it's the second option, then you can find it, can't you?" "Possibly, but I doubt it would be fast. We certainly don't have time for that kind of search right now." Emperor Am says, "True. We will be moving on in the morning. It is probably better not to ask. If I don't know, then my curiosity won't get any stronger. Right now, I can probably satisfy it just by examining the enchantments on the palace." Luckily, no one is able to dispute my comment as we arrive at the palace and are greeted by guards. As we are led straight into the throne room, I step up to walk beside Emperor Am. King Gremsho falls in behind me and Shiro follows behind her father. But a step back from Gremsho, Queen Mabel looks like a warm, matronly mother, like your childhood best friend's mom. Except she is the type who loves you, and yet your best friend tells you terrifying stories about her. She looks to be in her mid to late 40s. She is slightly overweight, and her blonde hair is now mostly gray. However, she has an amazing structure to her face. I bet she was drop-dead gorgeous when she was younger. If her daughters take after her in looks and have a brain, then it might be worth introducing one of them to Lynn. Not that I really want to look for another wife, but sometimes it is fun to think about. She is alone right now, sitting on her throne staring at the three of us, mainly at me. Either she doesn't like beastmen, or she has already been told that I am an emperor. A new emperor from an empire she has never heard of. That would certainly pique her curiosity. Queen Mabel says, "Oh my, what a handsome kitty you have brought me, Am. Oh, if only I were a few years younger." Emperor Am coughs and says, "Queen Mabel, this is my new ally, Emperor Ash." Queen Mabel says, "What? When did the Beastmen get organized enough to form an empire?" Luckily, during the time it takes for Am to explain who I am, I managed to revolve her from my surprise. Mabel flirting outrageously instead of being curious really threw me off. It isn't the flirting that got to me. It was the fact that I was expecting something different. Queen Mabel says, "Welcome, Emperor Ash. I apologize for jumping to the wrong conclusion. Welcome to my kingdom. It's all right. You just caught me by surprise." "It's a pleasure to meet you," Queen Mabel says. "It is a pleasure to meet you as well. I look forward to introducing you to my daughters. I am sorry to disappoint you, But I already have 4 wives. While I'm sure your daughters are beautiful, I am already quite outnumbered. Queen Mabel laughs and says, "That is the first valid reason to turn down my daughters that I have ever heard. I am very lucky in the fact that my wives all get along and I don't plan to risk that harmony. The only way I could possibly accept another wife would be if all my current wives agreed. Considering that they are back running my empire for me, that would be quite the task." Chapter 1475. Queen Mabel says, "I understand. You will still get to meet my daughters, the unmarried ones at least. I plan to take them with me in hopes that they can meet someone." "No offense, but how many daughters do you have?" Queen Mabel says. "5. 3 of them are unmarried and will be going with us." "No sons," Queen Mabel says. "No, unfortunately not. Hence why I need to find good husbands for my remaining daughters. I will have to select my successor from among them. I already know from all the problems that I have had that my people wouldn't allow one of my daughters to succeed me. I imagine that ruling as a woman in a non-matriarchal society is definitely not an easy thing to do. Men don't like taking orders from women. It tweaks all their insecurities, especially their pride." Queen Mabel says, "Oh, you don't need to tell me that. I am very aware of how fragile most men's pride is. I have had 2 husbands after all." Mabel and I share a laugh at that, and both Am and Shiro join in. But Grimshaw remains silent. Considering how he has said his wife treats him, that may have hit too close to home. That subject gets dropped as we move from the throne room to a grand dining room. Her daughters are joining us for dinner, but Mabel limits herself to just introducing them. As expected, all 5 of them are very attractive, but one stands out from the others. She is stunningly beautiful with long blonde hair, a very curvy figure, and piercing blue eyes. Luckily, she is one of the 2 married daughters. Otherwise, I might have been a little tempted. From the way that Grimshaw is staring at her, he is obviously tempted even with her being married. Mabel also notices, but all she does is give him a look of disgust, which he doesn't notice. In fact, during an exquisite meal, I notice all of her daughters giving him looks of disgust. However, they only do it when he is not looking, probably to keep things peaceful. After all, their kingdoms are neighbors, so keeping things peaceful is fairly important to them. I would be willing to bet that Queen Mabel and Grimshaw's wife get along fairly well. They would probably spend a lot of time complaining about Grimshaw and other men like him. Not that I would blame them for doing so. They have every right to complain. Come to think of it, Grimshaw never said what his wife's name was. He just called her names. That alone would tell me that she has every right to complain about him. We may not have stayed long at his castle, but he still could have introduced us, since he is Am's ally. I will keep my mouth shut for now, but I'm starting to not like Grimshaw. Not that I really liked him anyway. I just need to put up with him for this trip. I will just avoid him as much as I can, and I won't say anything for Am's sake. The dinner is amazing. The food is perfectly cooked, and the conversation is entertaining. Considering that this counts as politics, I actually end up really enjoying myself. If only politics could always be like this, I wouldn't have to spend so much effort avoiding it. Queen Mabel says, "You are really going through that food. Do I need to send to the kitchen for more? If it wouldn't be too much trouble?" Queen Mabel says. "No trouble. Has Am been starving you?" "No, nothing like that. I just need a lot more food than normal people." Queen Mabel says, "I know that beastmen eat more, but I didn't expect it to be to this degree. It makes me wonder how the tribes to the north even survive. Oh, I am not a beastman. This form is just for convenience. I didn't want to terrify your people." King Grimshaw says, "Wait, you're not a beastman. Then what are you?" I suppose the easiest way to explain it would be to call me a baby dragon. Mabel, her daughters, and Grimshaw all laugh like I am joking with them, but Am and Shiro don't. It takes the others a minute to notice that they aren't laughing, and that stops their laughter. Mabel is the one who asks Am if I am really serious, and she is quite surprised when he confirms it. I am pretty sure that at first they just think that Am is playing along with the joke. The table goes quiet as they slowly come to the realization that we are not playing a joke on them. It is Mabel's oldest daughter, the really hot one, that is the first to ask to see my real form. When I glance at Am, he gives me a nod, so I get up from the table and move to a clearer area. I push the other tables in the room aside to give myself enough room and then drop shapeshift. There is quite a bit of screaming, both from the table and from the servants. But when I don't attack, it calms down. Me laughing at Gremsho, who screamed like a girl, probably helps everyone calm down. Or it could be the fact that Am and Shiro don't react at all and just keep eating calmly. Still, it takes a few minutes for everyone to calm down and for them to return to their seats. Mavel's oldest, who didn't scream at all, is the one who approaches me and asks if she can touch me. When I agree, she starts running her hands along my scales, and she has a huge smile on her face as she does. When she doesn't get eaten, her sisters all join her, but they ask for permission first. At first, they are all calm and respectful, but then the oldest one reaches my wings. It turns out that my feathers are amazingly soft and cuddly, or at least that is what the daughters are saying. It is enough to get Mavel herself to get up and come feel them, at which point she asks me if I want to sell some feathers. With my region, it wouldn't be hard to regrow some feathers, but I decline her offer. I don't need money, and I really don't want to set a precedent of selling off body parts. It takes me several minutes to convince the lot of them to stop cuddling my wings and go back to dinner. As soon as they release my wings, I shapeshift back to my Beastman form and return to the table. Anne and Shiro are obviously finding the whole situation highly amusing. The interesting one is Gremsho. Every time I glance in his direction, he flinches. Mavel and her daughters, on the other hand, hit me with an endless series of questions. In the end, I basically have to tell them my entire story to get the questions to stop. Luckily, more food is brought out so I can at least eat while I am telling my story.